Hi again. So if we have looked at or are planning to look at Existentialism is a Humanism by Jean-Paul Sartre, we are going to encounter a couple of different things that we will need to address. First of all, Sartre is clearly feeling a bit defensive when he writes this essay. This essay is presented as a response, he says, to the overwhelming idea that existentialism is this sort of amoral philosophy, not anti-moral, but just amoral, right? That for Sartre, the critiques that have been leveled against existentialism are primarily that it sort of allows anybody to do anything because it doesn't really consider anything to be right or wrong. It's a wishy-washy sort of philosophy that says you exist, you can, be judged now that you've been born, but why would we judge anybody? Because really there's no point, right? We are all sort of existing and we make our own decisions and it's all subjective. And Sartre addresses several of these concepts, starting with, of course, the very famous description of what existentialism is according to him, and really according to most existentialist philosophers, that existence precedes essence. You were born, you can now be judged, and that your responsibilities on the earth are very important. That it is important that you take on the responsibility of your actions. And we can see this very practically in a couple of different ways. An example of this would be, you've probably been to stores before where they either have a DoorDash shelf where people can come in, and if they're DoorDash people, they just go up, they look for their name, they take their order, they go. And perhaps you even ordered, for example, at the Chipotle in the area, where you can just order, you can go in, it'll be on the shelf, you look for your name, you take it, you go. And very few people really pay attention to who's taking what. It's sort of assumed that if you ordered something, it's on the shelf, you're going to take it if it's yours. And we kind of agree to this behavior and agree that responsibility means that we only take things that are ours. We don't steal, because stealing would, if everybody were to steal, then the system would break down. Nobody would trust anybody. The store would no longer allow a shelf to exist in that way, and everybody would lose out. And we've kind of all agreed. We're generally good people, and the right thing to do is to go in to get the food that you paid for, and then to take it with you. And if you haven't paid for food, and if you haven't bought food, then you don't take it, right? Now, okay, perfectly fine. So for Sartre, that is the basis of existentialism for him, right? That your responsibility is hand in hand with existence. Existing means responsibility. It often is framed for him in this idea of impossible to resolve conflicts of responsibility. One of the big examples that he says is that he is, met with a student, and the student had a big concern. The student loved his mother. The student loved their country. They felt responsible for their country and thought, maybe I should go to war to support the country because this, is an important thing to do. I should join the military, go off and fight for the country that I love, because otherwise maybe, it won't be here for much longer. But he also loved his mother, and he knew that going to war and leaving his mother behind would expose her to not being properly cared for, right? He primarily cared for his mother, and so he didn't know what to do. What was the right response to that, right? In one case, he feels like he's not being responsible for his country. In the other, he feels like he's not being responsible for, so it just doesn't work, right? Sartre says this is the existential dread and the existential anguish that we will all face throughout our lives. Impossible choices, conflicts of interest, And people asking, really, do you think everybody should do the same thing that you're doing? And are your actions such that if everybody did what you are doing, that you'd be comfortable with it? Are you going to get married? Are you going to stay single? Are you going to have sex before marriage? Are you going to drink alcohol? You know, all of these questions really make it apparent that for Sartre, existentialism really put a lot of focus on this idea of responsibility and doing the things that you feel are most responsible, but also the things that are responsible in society. And that if you choose not to make those decisions, then you are shirking your responsibilities, right? Then you are not taking responsibility for your life and you become a jerk. So, in the next video, we're going to talk about a few more of these scenarios and what Sartre says is really the response that we need to have, right? We're going to face this existential dread for our entire lives. Is there anything we can do to not necessarily relieve the burden, but to live with less anxiety? Is it possible? Let's find out.